Hey, hey, hey! Overhead work continued, right? You'll see it on the board. Anything that says OH, you gotta know it means overhead, right? So we got the clients prepped up, right? They're ready to get into their best positioning with the band pass-throughs, the pull-aparts, the pull-downs, any other thing that you feel comfortable in getting them into as much of an unrestricted overhead position as possible. Right out of the gate, when we're talking about loaded movement patterns in that overhead position, we're talking about the strict press, we're talking about the dip and drive, and we're talking about the jerk, right? Those three things happen in sequence, right, as the load gets progressive. Kevin, how would you best try to describe the delineation between a strict press, a dip and drive, and the jerk?
So all three of those would be like exactly what Will said, the traditional, some type of pressing position standing for a barbell. So the easiest way to think about it right through the strict press is that the heaviest weight you could do for one rep with good form, feet under your hips, right, abs tight, elbows in front of the bar slightly. Right, you can do 100 pounds there and lock it out with good form without leaning back or using my hips, right? So 100 pounds for the strict press, perfect, great. You've got 135 pounds on the bar and you just can't physically press it any higher, right? So we get the elbows a little bit in front of the bar more, where we create this shelf, and that's where the dip and drive or the push press would be traditionally about 30% stronger by allowing my hips to engage through that motion. So strict press, right? 100 pounds. We go into that push press where we dip and drive that bar up. So I use my hips mostly and I guide it with my upper body for the dip and drive. And then the last one, say you needed another 30% heavier, right? Where I physically am not strong enough to press it, the push jerk. So same position as the push press, but as I dip and drive, right, I can't go any higher. I would make sure to punch under and stand up in that full extension. So it's a way of just trying to overload the bar in an overhead position. Strict press, push press or dip and drive, and then the push jerk.
Awesome. So what are some points of performance on the overhead press if we move to the Olympic bar we want to see from most clients?
So the biggest thing is that let them know that it's a full body move, right? If they're not engaged through the legs and the core, this is going to really transfer to the lower back and midsection. So just make sure that they understand that their legs are locked or somewhat engaged for the dip and drive and the push jerk. The strict press, where I show you the side view, is that the feet would definitely be under their hips. A lot of people are going to go to a squat stance, so really make sure that their feet are right under their hips. Elbows can be slightly in front of the bar, definitely not behind the bar, right? So slightly under the bar. The biggest thing, right, as they press is I've got to get my chin out of the way. I can't go around my head for that extension. So I'm going to just dip my head back a little bit as I press through and lock those elbows by my ears, full speed. Nice. Not trying to overextend or overarch, just make sure that I can get that good full extension. This is where that bar wants to be, is behind my head, right? That's going to be the full extension.
Nice tight belly, nice tight through the hips.
A little thing that you'll see is they'll keep the wrists open, right, at the top. So try to make sure they turn their knuckles over to the sky. It'll be a stronger position, especially for the push press or the strict press.
Great. So now, if you're doing a build to heavy, you may not get to the jerk, right? The jerk will be its own thing for the most part because you're trying to teach a technique that has a carryover to the clean and jerk. You'll more than likely run into a position where you're building to heavy, right? You got a 12 to 15 minutes in a superset, 12 to 15 minute in a woman's strength class where we want the participants to build to a 3 to 5 rep max. If you got strict presses and you're not intending to do the dip and drive, you still might find someone that wants to get that PR, they want to push a little bit more, or they just run into trouble. They thought they were going to strict press it and they can't, We might ask them, hey, just give me 1 or 2 reps of that dip and drive. So here are the points of performance on the dip and drive when we get to the point where they're going to need to use their legs to get that overhead position off of that strict press. Kevin, take
Will's
it.
absolutely right. Is that some people, it is a natural move to dip, right? Just the same as your jump, is that I'm going to use my legs to generate force. So Will's absolutely right. That someone in the class might get to a point where they go, hey, I was naturally dipping and driving. They might not even know that that was the next progression. It is a natural step. So almost the same, right, as the strict press. My feet are under my hips. My elbows are in front of the bar slightly, and the big thing is have the hands outside the shoulders, so there's a little bit of room for the bar to actually be on my shoulders, right? One of the things you'll see a lot of people with flexibility is they're holding the bar, and it's almost impossible to transfer my energy from my hips into my shoulders if the bar is not on my frame, right? So hands outside the shoulders, abs tight. As I dip slowly, it is not a squat, right? I would pause if I needed to just to teach it, but in full speed, we just want to dip. Same thing, get that head out of the way and punch the sky, elbows locked, right? Give you a couple of good.
And you're coming up quick.
Yeah, slow on the way down, and then I want to really accelerate to come up and punch the bar. It is definitely one motion, right? If you dip, pause, and press, you're losing the entire point of generating from the hip complex.
Talking about losing the entire point is people over squatting. You have to just really think about the physics behind what you're losing from over squatting. When you're over squatting and you got a big knee bend, you got a big hip angle, it is going to be progressively harder the farther down you go to accelerate out of that deep knee bend with anything that can contribute to the overhead position, right? You might be able to get away with it one time, but if you don't snap out of a shallow angle, you can really squeeze out of that quick. If you're trying to get that thruster going, it's going to be really hard to load it appropriately. So there's a clear delineation between a thruster, which is a fuller squat, and the dip and drive, which is designed to generate enough tension through the legs being snapped out under speed, right? That power motion driving through the spine, through the shoulders, and hopefully enough momentum that you can get to a place where then you can push those arms straight, right? Great. Stay tuned for the clean and jerk.